Hello to people also through internet. We hope that the net functions well. So today it's our last day of our conference. We had 3 very fruitful days, very interesting conferences, very interesting and fruitful discussions, I think. So today we will have our 3 last conferences. The first one will be by Professor Mary N. Gateway. She is a professor at the Department of Religious Studies at the Catholic University of Eastern Africa in Nairobi, Kenya. Her research, interests, and publications are on the interface between religion, education, culture, gender, peace, and health. She is also involved in community service and church initiatives that focus on the family with special interests in children, youth, and women. The topic of Professor Gateway today will be Gender Education in Religious Education, a challenge for the African Church. Dear Professor Gateway, welcome, and we enjoy your conference.
Do you hear?
Yes.
Okay, you can start.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. I truly appreciate the invitation to this conference. Unfortunately, I was not able to travel. I've been able to follow the proceedings, not all of them, but as much as I could. And thank you for all that is going on there in Zagreb. I want to go into the presentation immediately. I pray that there will be no power interruption, that is, the text is there. I'll try to make it as simple as possible, without very many details. My topic is gender education and religious education, a challenge for the African Church, and the more focused in an effort to address this topic within the theme of religious education to the creation of responsible European and African perspective, address the ideal work, the issues and challenges in Africa, and education, visions and on the way forward. I start by looking at, and I refer that is this, and particularly special introduction to the topic of it. There are several ideas highlighted therein to be and what's realized in this world. Number one is being educated and knowledgeable, taking having democratic principles of living in a plural community and educational views, but also having more responsible civic goals of those agents them, and which covers among the state and religion, national, covered in chapter 2, chapter 3, chapter, and then chapter 4, we have the big general provisions relating to the Bill of Rights, rights and fundamental freedoms, specific application of rights, and the human rights. Then chapter 15, for gender equality. I'm indicating here and several other constitutions. It is not to be assumed that it's common knowledge and that this idea of what the citizen should have or should be is realized. 2022, and as you about other countries, but there's a lot of dynamism. Just as we said, started in my presentation, Michael Ochula has indicated that elections is a citizenship seriously again. And he has given several ideas which I consider important when we are talking about citizenship. And he says that citizenship is a critical foundation for that. To belong to a society. It goes between to vote in an society, not
Mary, unfortunately, it is all the time interrupting.
but also involves a practice, and it can be judged according to the notion of excellence. The August election presents an opportunity for Kenyans to take citizenship seriously. That must involve a number of things, one of them being political intelligence, certain level of literacy about the political society and the people seeking elected positions, and that we should be prepared to cast votes. And citizen is not just apathetic, valuable content, or a bystander on issues of public interest. They must take part in the debate. They be guided, fairness and wisdom. They are prepared to listen and to get their evidence and make tough and sound decisions, and be willing to speak out the truth and have a stand on pertinent issues. To act not plain, but what is considered as best for the common good. To elect leaders who are willing to make personal sacrifices and compromises. To be motivated, which is a love for the country, loyalty to the community, and a desire to make society better. To be wary of fake news, and especially in these days of social media, modeled. And what I gather from this is that matters of good and human issues, men and women, they are also reflected in various religious institutions, traditions, including African religious heritage, especially in the myths of origin, which talk about the good and goodness and well-being of society and human beings. We see this, everything was very good, and also Revelation talks about eschatology, expected and hoped for. Now, while there could be an ideal world, I want to go further and look at the issue facing citizens, men and women in Africa. Gender is defined as social associated between male and female, and the relationship between women and men, girls and boys, as well as the relations between women and those between men. These attributes, opportunities, and relationships are socially constructed. Rather, people learn them through the process of socialization comes in. They are contextual and time-specific and changeable. And I get this from my guide to gender mainstreaming in this building and conflict transformation. This is a document produced by Feklaha in 2017. From what we have, the challenge that is put on the citizen, especially in elections, and I want to say generally in life, Jula has noted that ignorance, and fear are some of the challenges the citizens face when it comes to politics and elections in Africa. Gender undertones on women seeking women articulating the gender. Other challenges that are faced by citizens are captured in publication done way back in 2008, but the issues remain the same. And I specifically focused on this publication because it has keywords of responsible marriage and family, issues that which encompass gender issues and gender concerns. Kawongo Wambari or has addressed the issue of making sense about morality, reasoning, standing, and liberating morality. And he insists that in the society we need to take individual responsibility and Adam Chepkwony also talks about moral issues as understood in the African religion. And they say that these are still relevant today, even as foreign values are accepted, but this has created an identity crisis or a cultural dilemma. And this calls for the assessment in line with the contemporary times. In other words, how are they relating the realities of the concept? Erika Seka talks about ethics and work ethic, and that the church is a key stakeholder in the reform process and ought to voice its concerns in the institutionalization of reform through social empowerment as well as strongly so against corruption. Janet Chenguru says there is a great need for parents and the wider contemporary, the wider community to understand adolescents and develop good communication skills with them and build a good spiritual foundation that they can lean on to teach on family values as it relates to contemporary times. Margaret Gishaga, on the other hand, addresses the importance of the demand for sex education today, the various institutions such as the school, the church, and the family, who should promote respect for sexuality, human life, and common good. And gives a definition of the importance of marriage, preparation for marriage, selection of a mate, and how this can assist in weathering marriage storms. Zablon Utaburi addresses polygamy and Christianity and the theological and pastoral considerations thereof. Mara talks about HIV and AIDS as they teach on the family and the husband and wife response of the church. Is it to save life or to save families and to save marriages? What to give a successful marriage? The home team and the uniqueness of each marriage and family. And the second talks about the balancing between the focus on children, management.
Just 2 seconds till you reset it.
Sorry, Mary. Mary, sorry. We must reset. We must interrupt a little bit to reset.
Oh, no.
Challenges in the family, such as seeking prestige, power, pleasure, possessions, approval by others, materialism. And Moisaka also emphasizes the significance of role modeling. In that publication, I personally talked about the challenges of aging and retirement, and the challenges of aging, retirement, and retrenchment, and what the church needs to do about this. Zakaria Samita, on the other hand, looks at the family and church in new Christian religious movements with regard to their characteristics, content, contributions, and some concerns, and how this affects on family. Beatrice Churu looks at religion and ethics in schools with regard to obstacles to ethics education and how we can have faith-based education and community responsibility for education. The last article in this publication is that of Mugambi, who talks about rites of passage, that is especially birth, initiation, and marriage, and the cultural education in tropical Africa today as a means of education, as well as the need to respect one's culture and that of others, and that the alternative rites of passage that are practiced in Africa today are as a way of responding to the contemporary times. Now, why I referred to this article is because each one of these authors is addressing an issue which has an implication on religion and on gender, and therefore is relevant to our discussion today. Other significant gender-related issues facing the contemporary African man and woman include, and this is implied also in the publication that I've just reviewed, include the identity crisis and cultural disorientation, and the leading double lives as Christian and as African. Changing roles of both men and women, men boss at home, but subordinate in the office and vice versa. Migration in search of greener pastures at the expense of the family, and this is for both men and women. High expectations from the society for both men and women. And yet there is also the balance between career and family. And then they pushed aside or aggrieved or ignored boy child, because there has been a lot of emphasis on the girl child. And then other challenges just as drug and substance abuse, single parenthood, single motherhood, early and forced marriages, especially for the girls, and pregnancy, and of course, new religious movements as addressed by Samita above. Now, if we have all these concerns that raise issues on how is education responding to them, how is religious education to them, responding to them, is there any emphasis on gender education? I've identified agents or agencies of religious or gender education in Kenya. And I start by saying that we need to note that there are 3 types of education, and each has an application in the African context. One is the informal, which was associated with indigenous culture and is loosely structured, so to say, but is contextual. And then formal, which is associated with the colonization and missionaries, and structured with levels, examinations, certificates, certification, specialization, and titles. Then the non-formal education, this is literacy with a skill, spearheaded by the church and the NGOs, mainly targeting informal settlements. And I'm sorry to put it this way, but failures of the formal type of education. Now, from the discussion above on issues facing the citizen in Africa, and on the basis of the types of education, the following are identified as agencies of religious and gender education in Kenya. Now, in pre-colonial Africa, and I've said also rural Africa, I've put a question mark there, because which Africa is really rural, because there's a lot of globalization, but loosely understood as rural. Religion permeates every aspect of life, and this can be seen in this written by Mbiti and Magesa. Therefore, religion is part of everyday life, and religious education is therefore part of life. Education is seen as lifelong and life-centered on the context and related to the day-to-day lives of the people. The context was also specific to the age, the sex, the status, and as I've already mentioned, the context. The methodology was also age specific, for example, with children, lullabies, role play, and then we have initiation. There's a lot that one can say about that, but time may not allow. And then the instructors included the parents, siblings, older folk, peers, the family, the community. And this was not just on matters gender, but also on all aspects of life. Specialization came with age for both men and women. and women and men were therefore instructors. And this could be applying, maybe not fully, in the rural setups. But I've already indicated that this rural, but with a lot of frustration from globalization and other modern and contemporary realities. Now, when the missionaries came to Kenya and to Africa, and I think this has been covered by earlier presenters, they came with the 3 C's of Christianity, civilization, and commerce. A new curriculum which involved with the involvement of the state for funding, for curriculum, and for policy. Separation from real life because the curriculum was international and a lot of it maybe does not address contextual issues. And then it was initially for a selective few. No or hardly any women, and careers were also centered along gender. Even the women got an education, then went into nursing, into teaching, etc. Now, this formal type of education draws a fee, hence not all can afford, and because of the patriarchal and patrilineal nature of many societies in Africa, the boy child was given priority. Religious education or Christian education has been compulsory, but with time, especially in the mission schools, but with time it has become optional. And in Kenya, when the mission schools were taken over by the government, then other faiths have come on board. Religious education now is offered at all levels and is hence open to boys and girls. And religious education is an examinable subject. And my question is, how relevant is this in producing a good citizen? Is it to pass, or is it for ethical and moral reasons? And then the various key denominations draw the content. What I mean here is the syllabus that is given in the schools, especially in primary and secondary school, the various denominations have panels. They come together and they draw the content, and therefore there's an element of ecumenism. The content includes African cultural heritage, and in schools also there are clubs. In other words, apart from the teaching in class, there are also co-curricular or extracurricular activities, and many of them are of religious nature. Then in Kenya, we also have the program on pastoral instruction in primary schools. Each denomination has an opportunity to send external instructors to the school to ground the children in the denominations and also to help them fit in life. The home, I'm also considering that the home and the family are part of the agents of religious education, and in this, gender education also comes in. And we have already mentioned the various issues that are of concern to citizens, to family, to individuals. And what is the role of the church in this? I'm indicating, without repeating or without appearing to repeat, that the church introduced formal education. The church has established schools at all levels, right from the lower level up to university. Religion is offered in schools, and also the church offers quasi-educational services through health facilities that benefit both Christians and non-Christians. The church has a large following in Africa, 82%, and the church can influence policy. For example, we have seen that they contribute in coming up with a curriculum, and the church has or should have moral authority and obligation. Alumni in various sectors in positions of influence are a rich resource, Wangari Maathai, the Nobel laureate, is one good example. We could also say that independence cabinet was composed of so-called mission boys. The Christian is also expected to be a mentor, a role model, directly and indirectly. The majority of instructors in lower schools are women, and we also need to acknowledge the role of women missionaries, religious women orders, and those especially that are in the charism of education. And then there is also opportunity to offer family, life, education, civic education, health messages, and other subjects towards responsible citizenry. Having covered all these issues, then, what are some of the recommendations that I consider important when we are talking about gender education in religious education? Generally, education is regarded as a panacea, a solution, an answer to many problems, challenges facing the citizen in Africa. Many families struggle to send their children to formal school with the hope that on attaining the certificate, poverty and other life-threatening issues, some of which we have mentioned, will be sorted and that the ideal world will be realized. Rich families pay dearly for the education of their children, including sending them to boarding schools and even abroad. Many families also opt to enroll their children, especially girls, in mission or faith-based institutions with the hope and expectations that this category of schools will be of added value. The premium that is placed on education, on religious education and gender education, should assist in appreciating that education is an asset that should be availed and available to all citizens, men and women, that religious education should provide that extra something extra special, such as gender education. The gender education will in turn assist recipients to appreciate that an ideal or real society or world recognizes that both men and women have concerns and issues that need educational attention of the family, of the school, and the church. And the church has the moral responsibility and obligation in assisting individuals, families, and schools, indeed the entire citizenry, to experience and realize fullness of life in the here, in preparation and anticipation of the hereafter. I want to thank you for your attention, and I'd like to stop there. Thank you. Sorry, I didn't get you well. Okay.
presentation. It was very systematic, very rich, and you touched a lot of themes which are, I can say, pretty new for us in a European perspective. So we can open the discussion. Has anybody in the public questions or complementarity to give to this presentation to the Professor Gateway? Please. A ona me ne čuje.
Profesorica ne čuje što si rekao. Ne, baš
Professor Gateway, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Yes, we have two microphones, so it's not easy to know which microphones is available for the communication. I just said thank you very much for your presentation. It was very systematic and very rich, especially from a European point of view. You touched a lot of themes which are news for us in Europe. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay. So I just opened the discussion. Maybe some participants here from Zagreb can ask a question for you or make some complementarities to your presentation.
Okay.
The discussion is open.
That's okay.
Dear Mary, thank you very much
Thank you.
for your rich presentation. We had a little bit difficulties with hearing you, but we will read after that all the aspects of the thematic of the topic. Sorry for our English, for mine at least. And it is for me really impressive to see how deep do you comprehend the whole topic of gender education, especially regarding the women. And some things are known also to us and are common also to us here, is the changing identities regarding gender and changing gender roles in the society. Some of them are perhaps more specific for Africa. Could you say us something about the percentages of children that have access to schools, the problems of the youth regarding the diseases? Thank you.
Okay, I can answer right away. Thank you very much for the intervention. Yeah, yes, indeed, the changing roles and identities, I think, are across the world. And for us, quite challenging because we have cultural expectations still and grappling with the contemporary times. Now, I do not have the figures right here immediately, but access to schools. Initially, it was the boys who got a chance to get formal education. But as time has gone on, it is now more open for girls and for boys. And one thing I could mention is the affirmative action that was passed by the government a few years ago. with regard to girls' access to the university, they were given some special considerations. But also in this affirmative action, it is also applies on issues of disability and also those who come from more disadvantaged environments, because geographically here in Kenya, we are not blessed the same. There are some of the areas which struggle more than others. I could also mention that, again, I don't have the figures right here offhand, but initially there were courses which were more predominantly for women, especially at the university, but this is changing now. And the sciences, it was mainly arts for women, but now there are women also getting on into the sciences. And now that we're talking about the church in Kenya in the last few years, a lot of the denominations have also started universities, and a big chunk of the private universities are faith-based organizations. Now, challenges of the youth are very many. The poverty, and I think I've had it mentioned in the previous sessions in this symposium, poverty, but at the same time, trying to catch up with the times. And I'll just use an example of where I teach, the Catholic University of Eastern Africa. It's a private institution, and for a long time, we just received the students who would pay for themselves. Of course, they are disadvantaged students who are on various scholarships. And then a few years ago, the government said even the private institutions could admit private government-sponsored students. What we have noted is that the government-sponsored students struggle more than those who have come in as fee-paying, because it's parents who decide that their children should come in as fee payers, and they are probably able to meet the fees. And the children would like to live a life that is beyond their means, to have a nice phone, to be in fashion, at the expense even of their books. And especially during COVID-19, when we needed to go online, a lot of the students struggled because they may not have the technology that goes with it. Some of them come from far-flung areas, and even communication was difficult. The young people then, some of them are drawn to some of the new religious movements and other movements that attract them, that could give them some financial or material assistance. And right now, there's a lot of fear that young men and young women are being recruited into fundamentalist groups, even Islam. And another problem also is manipulation of youth, even by politicians. As I mentioned, this is an election year, and young people are easy prey. And both young girls and young boys, they are easy prey to be used in the campaigns. Of course, they get some money out of it, but this is really very, very little, and it's not long lasting. And then we have a rampant increase of drugs and substance abuse. And it's starting at a very early age. And unemployment also remains quite a big challenge for many of our young people. And then families are not as stable as it was before. Many reasons for this. We have already talked about these cultural dynamics and cultural identity, cross-culture marriages, single parenthood, and all these things have got an impact on youth. But I could also say that many churches also have programs for youth where they address issues of self-esteem, career, and generally fitting in the society. And again, youth are a majority of the population. I think I would just end it there. Thank you.
And the boys in some Catholic schools, and I would like to hear you about this separation. I think it could be understood also as a gender challenge. I think it is done in this vision, which is good to say they will get good values. They will not be disturbed by boys, and girls could learn without problems, without the contact with boys. In my point of view, I think it is a challenge to now. The second question is related to the third question that I would like to ask you. It is this question about the difference between villages, the education of girls in villages, in African villages, and the education of girls in African cities. What do you think about this the difference, and as a challenge also as for the country? The last one, it is concerns this crisis which exists, I think, about traditional African values and modern values. How girls are concerned by this question. Thank you very much, dear Professor Mary.
Thank you very much, Jean Paul, for those questions. Here in Kenya, it is not just the Catholic schools, but the government is recommending that boys and girls be separated. To find a school which was mixed for a long time. Now the girls are going into their section and the boys are going into their section. I am a product of Catholic schools all the way from primary school to secondary school. And I remember what the sisters, the nuns used to tell us is that society is made up of boys and girls. And what they did is, this was an all-girls school, or I was in all-girls school, and there were opportunities for us to meet the boys through debates, through sports, and various other activities. Personally, I would go for mixed schools, so that, because society is men and women. And why I say that is because in among the Gikuyu, for example, when the girls in the traditional society, when the girls and boys went through initiation and now they are getting ready for marriage, they were given an opportunity to stay together. And maybe I could go a little bit. Among the Gikuyu, a young boy and a young girl, there was no difference in the roles that they played. The girls could go and take care of cattle, The boys would fetch firewood and get water because they wanted them to grow knowing the context of the society and the expectations of life. Then when they went through initiation, there are many debates about initiation, but when they went through initiation, then there was a practice called Ingweko, where the boys and girls were allowed to sleep together and even dance together and have very intimate interaction, but without sex. Now, this was supposed to help them to learn about each other, about boys and girls, and to respect each other, so that there is no mystery about the physical or emotional issues about men and women. But I think it goes more than just boys and girls. It's what kind of training are we also going to give them? In Kenya right now, our secondary schools are bursting with the population of young people. Some schools have got as many as 2,000, 2,500 students. I think it would be difficult to have boys and girls together where the congestion is very high. So depending on the situation, yes, for me, boys and girls together, that should be the ideal. And then they are taught to respect each other and they appreciate respecting each other. But where this cannot happen, then the separation. But the separation should also have opportunity and moments of interaction that could be healthy. Now, the difference between the urban girl and the village girl, I said earlier that village is not village as it was before. But what is turning out is that the village girl is sometimes more rounded than the urban girl, because in the village, she'll be introduced probably to milking, to going to the farm, to getting water, and to appreciate the value of work. Urban, we tend to have, again, urban is of different categories. There's urban of informal settlements, of middle class and of upper class. But a lot of times our children, our girls, and even our boys are not really introduced to the world of work. And for me, education should prepare the person fully. As I interact with young people, a lot of times, I talk about the 3H. The H of using the head, that is academic, the H of using the hand, that is physical, and the H of using the heart, which is about relationships and interacting with other people. And this is where I think the family then comes in. What kind of education, what kind of socialization, what kind of preparation are we giving our children for life? And I think this is where the church also comes in, and the youth groups in the churches. What are they giving the youth? Now, the crisis of traditional values and modern values, in that book, which I more or less did a review, Professor Jason Mugambi says that the traditional initiation had a lot of value for the girl and for the boy of Africa. But some of those practices may not apply today practically. But he talks about the principles of introducing the young people to responsibility, to appreciating relationship, to being involved in the world around us, and those things which I talked about of the ideal citizen and the ideal world. Now, in Kenya today, we have, if I talk, for example, about initiation of boys from childhood to adulthood, there was circumcision for boys, there was clitoridectomy for girls. The missionaries were not very happy about these practices, and even some of them medically, scientifically, they have seen not to be healthy. But now we have what we are calling alternative rites of passage. And these are being promoted by the churches, by individuals, even by civil society. And this is where the girls and the boys are going through some socialization, covering important contemporary issues as they transition from childhood to adulthood. And for the girls, there's those communities that give circumcision to girls. This is not happening, but they are trying to give them values and principles that can help them in life. So the traditional values, the practices may not necessarily be translated to the contemporary society, but those principles where the children were taught on self-respect, on teamwork, on taking responsibility and creativity, I think we cannot say that those are not useful anymore, because those are the things that make a human being a human being. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor Gateway, for your answers also. It was a pleasure and an honor to get you with us, and we sincerely regret that you couldn't come in Croatia because the visas problems, but we hope we will meet you again, maybe in Croatia or in Africa, or God knows. Thank you very much. Maybe we will have the opportunity to read your paper after, maybe in some kind of act of this colloquium, we will see. So thank you very much, and God bless you, and all the best to you.
Thank you very much. What I think is just a summary. There's a lot of information, and in case you are organizing another conference, you're welcome to Nairobi. We'll be very happy to host you. Thank you so much, everybody, and again, thank you for the invitation. God bless.
Thank you. Now we have to reset and to connect the other speaker after you.
I can't hear you.
It was this point.
Okay, Professor, thank you. I'm gonna
So our next speaker is Professor Simeon Esama Owono. He is the Vice Dean and the Professor.
Before giving my presentation,
Just a moment, Professor, just a moment. We have a speaker here who is announcing you.
okay.
Ali onda na internetu ne čuju više nekaj. A, ne čuju. It's modernity.
Tak da vas i on čuje.
Hello, dear Professor Simon. I will just introduce you. I will just introduce you to the public. So the next speaker is Professor Simeon Esama Owono. He's the Vice Dean and the Professor at the Catholic University of Central Africa in Yaoundé, Cameroon, and Director of the Public Education and Action Search Center, le Centre de recherche en éducation et action publique. He received his doctorate in educational sciences from the University of Ottawa. His research interests include children's rights, the education relationship, school ethnography, citizenship education, educational ethics, and educational policy. The topic of Professor Owono is very interesting and very also challenging, not only in Africa, I suppose, but also in Europe, more and more. And the title of his presentation is The Stability of Catholic Secondary Schools in Cameroon in the Face of Rising Violence in Public Schools, Understanding the Difference. I'm sorry, I said the Catholic secondary schools, not seminary schools. Understanding the difference. Thank you very much, Professor Owono. The floor is yours in your ways. Please. Please.
Okay. So I'm very glad to be with us. I'm thankful for the organizer of this colloquium. I will apologize for my quality of English language. My communication sounds French with English words. So I would like to begin. So I'm not very fluent. I would like to speak in French, but I have a translation of my communication in English. So at the introduction, I will say that violence in Cameroon is a total social fact at this moment. For the past 10 years, it has been expressed in the sociological sphere. Visible signs are demonstration of the improvement of general living conditions, such as demonstration against the high cost of living, for example. Strikes, trade union gatherings to protest against condition of workers in specific sectors of activities. Political claims contesting the result of an election or less openly demanding a change in the current political regime. These demonstrations, often peaceful in their claims, often end in violent repression by the police. The socio-political violence is indicative of a generalized crisis of authority in that is increasing from the political spheres of family and school. Indeed, we have seen claims and protests carried under the corporatist banner by lawyers and teachers in the northwest and southwest of Cameroon, transformed or recuperated by other diffuse social forces and end up in armed conflict from 2016 until today. In the far north of the country, it is a movement of religious origin, Boko Haram, that is challenging the school system in force in Cameroon and in all countries of the Lake Chad Valley, Cameroon, Chad, Nigeria, and Niger. Apart from this socio-political and religious movement, the school is in its organization as an institution of the state. The school experienced several scenes of incivility, highly mediatized, such as physical violence, corporal punishment, fights leading to murder, verbal and psychological violence, insult, intimidation, harassment, apology and imitation of some images, violent image in classroom and outside. Thus, as a social phenomenon, violence does not spare the school. Once a sanctuary and have an heaven of peace, protect from the civils and struggles of society, an institution that prepare for sociality and or responsible citizenship. The school has become a breeding ground from the evils of society. But in these gloomy pictures, we note a certain stability in Catholic educational institutions. What explains this stability? Do religious values have a positive impact in this stability? To what extent can religious values contribute to the development of responsible accountability? This question, from the backdrop of our reflection, our approach essentially socio-pedagogical. It will be sociological and pedagogical. Sociological because it will reserve a large part for the description of the fact. Pedagogical because this approach will dwell on the teacher relationship in the classroom and everything that surrounds the organization of the teaching learning process. After presenting the context for the study, we will present the broad outlines of Cameroonian education system, the literature review on citizenship education in Cameroon and elsewhere, the survey approach, the result, the discussion, and the recommendation. That is the plan of the article. So I will choose some part of the communication from here. The context of the study concerns about civic education and morality of Cameroon youth have grown over the past 15 years. First, there was the creation of a Ministry of Youth and Civic Education in 2009. Above all, there was a speech by the head of state on February 10th, 2013, on the eve of the commemoration of the 47th Youth Day. The theme of this event was youth, civic responsibility, and participation in the development process. He circumscribed this issue of civic responsibility in terms that seem to be the state of the matter. He stated, the level of morality of our youth is deteriorating. It is enough to read the news in the press to realize this. Probably, moreover, the behavior of some young people is not, to a certain even, only a reflection of our society. But this is not a good excuse. Indeed, even we manage to raise the standard of living of our population, even if we ensure the proper functioning of our democratic institutions, even if we maintain peace and stability in our country, the peaceful and prosperous society that we want to build will be undermined from within if these advances are not accompanied by an improvement of public morality. After making this observation, the president continued with an exhortation by way of orientation. I urge you, the youth, to adopt an exemplary and responsible moral behavior. I urge your parents to assume their responsibility and to lead you in this way. Civic mindedness, it cannot be said enough, is the foundation of any society. Our churches, our temples, and our mosques must once again become true school of civic mindedness, rigor, and morality. This speech will be at the origin of the International Symposium of Civic Education and National Integration from July 8 to 10, 2013, organized by the Cameroonian government. Upstream, a civic education repository had been prepared, and it was to be correct on the basis of contribution from experts participating in this colloquium. The colloquium brought together an array of guests from all social strata. The Catholic Church was represented by the Metropolitan Bishop of Yaoundé at this moment, Monsignor Tonier Bakot. What was changed since that colloquium? Before going for, I want to have only 2 words to the Cameroonian education system. We have an educational system with 2 subsystems. The French subsystem and the Anglo-Saxon subsystem. And in the 2 subsystems, we have confessional education. And this confessional education is my priority in this communication. So in literature review, the literature review concerns the result of the colloquium of 2013. We can say, to resume this colloquium, that it presents why Cameroon have, after the colonialization area, instruction, education, how can I say in English? Before citizen education, we have had instructional civic education. And after that, we have had civic education, and now citizenship education. The colloquium was in majority based on member of government. So Minister of Education, higher education, secondary education, and basic education have presented how citizenship education is teach at their step of education. The methodological framework we have chosen is the qualitative method. Our inquiry is to know how in the violent environment, Catholic schools are stable. So to know about this, we have chosen in-depth interview we have made in 3 secondary school in Yaoundé, Catholic secondary school in Yaoundé. In these schools, we have had some 3 of our students who are working in these schools. Because of difficulties of rendezvous, we have made our search through WhatsApp, and the length of the participant is 12, 4 in each school, respecting the gender. So 2 men and 2 women by school. The inquiry was based in three parts. The first part was to search to know the existence of the violence. And the second part of our inquiry is to know the sense actors are giving to their action. And the third part of the inquiry is to know the solution they can make for this situation. On the existence of violence, all the interviewers acknowledge that violence exists in their school. One of them summarized it in these terms: all schools experience violence, but not with the same degree of acuity. It takes many forms: verbal, physical, and psychological. The meaning of the violence. The causes of violence are attributed for the traditional and social media, television, radio, and the internet, which broadcast ideological content and promote violence by broadcasting obscene and violent images. There are also opinion leaders that we call influencers who promote violence, according to our interviewer. The stability the stability of Catholic school is explained by a certain discipline and other subjects staff, religion courses, catechesis, education to life and love. For our interviewer, religion's values contribute to the formation of responsible citizens because they are based on love of neighbor and are able to contribute to universal citizenship. However, more coercive elements must be added to them, especially to the school level. To our discussion, we notice that only the responsibility of violence is caused by children, by students. That is the limit of the study that has only adult people to respond. The contribution of the church to the formation of a citizenship, to a citizenship education is undeniable. It concerns essentially is teaching, rite, sacraments, and religious practices. It is itself at the origin of the concept of the person and of human dignity, without which the notion of citizenship is empty of its content. What remains is the assimilation of the content of this teaching and the putting into practice of this teaching in school and in a daily life. Recommendation. Religious education takes place in a violent environment because the educational system was born on colonial violence. It still carries this violence in its practices. To become aware of the violent history, our recommendation is that we have to become aware of the violent history of African people. Beyond efficiency, we have to promote pedagogical dialogue. We have to create school environments that respect human dignity. The limit of my language is the limit of my word. This is the resume of a communication. I hope to be able to respond to the question you could have for me. You will have the whole text next time. Thank you. Yes.
this meeting because it's a
So, I will make a confession. I will confess.
It's not a paste.
Simon. When did you the last time make your confession? I am here. I'm joking. Simeon, you heard me? You heard me? Yes. So we can have 10, 15 minutes about discussion. Maybe if somebody from the public has some questions for you. You heard me? Yes?
Yeah.
Okay.
Hello, Simeon. It was very interesting to hear you, and your English was excellent for us who don't know English so well as well. And I'm very grateful for the results of your research and for making that research at all. Regarding your interpretation, why there is less violence in Catholic schools than in state schools. That is the fact more or less in Europe, also in many countries, European countries, in Croatia as well. And I'm asking myself if there are only the factors of discipline, moral education in Catholic schools that contributes to that. Or is it also the preconditions of in the families that are perhaps more stable, more how to say, the children that come from that families have better presuppositions, material and psychological and so on. Did you perhaps question that through some items or not? It is okay if not, because a colleague of mine made a similar research, and the results were interpreted in a similar way regarding the discipline and referring to Italian researches also and so on.
So the question about citizenship education is a systemic problem. So is a part of a family responsibility and a part of citizen education in school. So the environment of school for me is the most important. We have school with crowded people and one teacher. For example, we have classes with 80 or 100 people and one teacher. It's very difficult to teach and have a good dialogue, to have the condition to follow the progress of a people. Is very difficult for in this environment. In Catholic school, we have the classes are not so crowded, but the difference between public school and Catholic or confessional education is, for me, based on the organization. So we have 4 months before the end of the school year. In confessional school, we have the agenda of the next year, the next school year. But for the public, in the same month of the resumption of
So, microphone here.
So unfortunately, we cannot connect with Simeon from Cameroon, but it was a very interesting also presentation, research on a very, very important theme at different level. We hope that Simeon can maybe follow the end of symposium by internet, online. We hope that. And maybe he can include in the discussion after in some ways. I don't know. So now we are a little bit late with our program, but it's a time to have a little pauses, maybe 15 minutes at least, 10 minutes, and then at 11 and 10 we can go back here to continue and to finish our symposium. Thank you very much, and thank you. So, hello everybody. We began our last session with the last lecture. It will be two speakers. I will present them very shortly. The speakers are Professor Josip Šimunović. He's a professor and head of the Department of Practical Theology and the Dean of the Catholic Faculty of Theology, University of Zagreb. His research interests include pastoral care in parishes and schools. He's a researcher in the project European Values Study, Croatia in Europe. He's also a member of the Commission for the Permanent Formation of Employees in Catholic Schools at the National Office for Catholic Schools of the Croatian Bishops' Conference. He will make a presentation with another colleague, Mrs. Gordana Barugia. She's a senior advisor for religious education at the Croatian Education and Teacher Training Agency in Zagreb, Croatia. Apart from her work related to the field of continuing education of religious education teachers, the subject of her research interest is also the feminist theology. Their presentation, in one way, shows all, conclude from the Croatian perspective, but also shows the title of our conference, the European and African perspective of the religious education, but here from the Croatian point of view. Please, you are welcome.
Thank you, Tomislav. Thank you, Thea, for inviting me on this conference. Thank you, Joseph, for preparing together with me this presentation, but you will hear on first time just me, and after maybe Professor Joseph also. And thank you all of you who stayed until the end on these conferences. The topic of our presentation is religious education in public and Catholic schools in Croatia, how to promote an open and dialogical identity. How can one build own identity without compromising the identity of another? That's the question. How can one educate the respect the identity of others? Is cooperation between the church and civil society in this process even possible? These are just some of the questions that we are asked by our excellent speakers from different countries and cultural backgrounds at this conference. In the final lecture, we will present how Catholic religious education takes place in public and Catholic schools within the educational system of the Republic of Croatia, and what possibilities such an approach opens up for education and the promotion of open dialogue. We have divided the lecture into 7 shorter chapters. First, we will introduce you to the legal framework consisting of the agreements concluded between the government of the Republic of Croatia and the Holy See. Following this, we will present statistical data on religious education in the Republic of Croatia and in Catholic and public schools. The professional basis for teaching is the curriculum. So we will say a few words about what preceded and what the situation is at present. Starting from the curriculum, we will point out the methodological elements: correlation in the teaching of Catholic religious education, interdisciplinary correlation, interdisciplinary and content elements that lead directly or indirectly to education for a culture of dialogue. we will present some examples from the practice of religious education and briefly discuss the importance of professional development for teachers of religion. Finally, we will explore some issues related to Catholic schools, as they are quite specific compared to the public schools. Legal framework. After the fall of communism and the advent of democracy, the Church in the Republic of Croatia began to open up to new recipients, whose circle was constantly expanding. In the year 1991-92 school year, Catholic religious education again became a part of the school education system. Religious education in schools emphasizes the holistic education of the students and promotes personal and universal social and religious values in addition to religious values. Religious education not only provides comprehensive knowledge of Catholic faith, but also helps students to develop their own spiritual abilities, ethical and moral awareness and values, and to build a critical attitude toward life and the world. The legal framework for Catholic religious education in the Republic of Croatia consists of the agreements concluded between the Holy See and the Republic of Croatia. The first is, on the picture is also the first one. The first is the agreement between the Holy See and the Republic of Croatia on their cooperation in the fields of education and culture, signed 1996. Professor Odilon already mentioned this document. Article 1 reads as follows, quotation: "The Republic of Croatia, in the light of the principle of religious freedom, respects the fundamental right of parents to the religious education of their children and undertakes to ensure the teaching of Catholic religious education as part of the curriculum and in accordance with the will of parents or guardians in all public primary and secondary schools, as well as in preschool institution as a compulsory subject for those who choose it, under the same condition as the teaching of other compulsory subjects." In the second picture, you can see a publication in which is published the agreement between the government of the Republic of Croatia and the Croatian Bishop Conference on the implementation of Catholic religious education in public schools and religious education in public preschools institution, which was signed 1999. It sets out in detail the status of subjects that are compulsory for students who choose them, the quality of implementation conditions as for all other subjects, the minimum number of students who must form a class, it is 7 students, the provision of religious education on the basis of 2 school hours per week, the responsibilities of the Croatian Bishop Conference in relation to curricula and textbooks, as well as other responsibilities related to monitoring the quality of performance and the training of religious education teachers, and the determination of who may provide religious education in schools. On the third picture, you can see a website of the National Office for Catholic Schools. And there you can find the agreement of Catholic primary and secondary schools concluded between the government of the Republic of Croatia and the Croatian Bishop Conference on 2011. In it, the Catholic Church is granted the right to establish preschool institutions and schools of any level and to manage them in accordance with the provisions of canon law and the legislation of the Republic of Croatia, provided that the Catholic schools respect the laws of the Republic of Croatia when implementing the curricula of the main compulsory subject and when issuing official documents. Statistical data. The Republic of Croatia is divided into 20 counties and the capital city of Zagreb. This table shows the total number of students and the number of students attending confessional religious education. A useful note here is that the Republic of Croatia primary education is compulsory grades from 1 to 8, while secondary education is not compulsory. You can see that it is about 88% students who choose religious education in primary schools, and it is about 76% of students who choose religious education in secondary schools. Also, as you can see, in the school year 2021-22, there have been 1,372 primary schools and 442 secondary schools, of which 12 are Catholic primary schools and 12 are Catholic secondary schools, with 2,202 students in primary schools, those Catholic schools, and 2,364 students in secondary schools. In Catholic primary and secondary schools, Catholic religious education is a compulsory subject, and it is taught on the basis on 2 school hours per week. You can see also that there are 2,222 religious education teachers in primary schools in all Croatia, in all schools, and 537 religious education teachers in secondary schools in all Croatia. A number of all teachers in the Republic of Croatia is around 65,000, so that is 2%. Curricula. We have already pointed out that the concluded agreements providing a framework for the teaching of Catholic religious education stipulated that the Croatian Bishop Conference is responsible for the curricula of the subject Catholic religious education, as well as for the related textbooks. After Catholic religious education was reinstated as a part of educational system in the school year 1991-92, the Ministry of Education and Culture adopted the curriculum of religious education in primary school and the religious education program for secondary schools, general instruction. It is important to point out that in the same year, the ministry published curricula for religious education for several other religious communities: Orthodox Christian religious education, draft curriculum framework for Islamic religious education, for primary and secondary school, Jewish religious education, fundamentals of the religion of the Christian Adventist Church, fundamentals of the Gospel of the Church of the Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, and evangelical curriculum. This is this first one on slides. The following curriculum of Catholic religious education in primary school was approved by the Croatian Bishop Conference 1997 and verified by Ministry of Education and Sports on 1998, and was in use until the publication of the new curriculum of Catholic religious education in primary schools in 2003. The Croatian National Educational Standard, so-called HNOS, introduced a new approach to teaching in primary schools, and the ministry issued a curriculum for primary schools which brought adjustment for all subjects, including Catholic religious education, and has been implemented even since 2006. You can also see, so that is the first, second, third, fourth one. The last update occurred in 2019 when the curriculum of the subject Catholic religious education for primary schools and gymnasium was devised as a part of comprehensive curriculum reform. In 4-year secondary schools, the 2009 Catholic religious education curriculum for 4-year secondary schools is used, while in 3-year secondary schools, the Catholic religious education curriculum for 3-year secondary schools is used since 2014. Although the last document from 2019 emphasized the curriculum as a starting point for planning religious education lessons, the curricular approach is strongly emphasized in the Catholic religious education curriculum from primary school from 2003. While the open curriculum is the highlighted didactic methodological foundation for planning and programming religious education. Even more important for our topic would be to single out the described principles of school religious education. They are fidelity to God and mankind, ecumenical and dialogical openness of religious education, and the principle of correlation in religious education. Those three are more important. These principles are stated differently, but as they are important and unchangeable, they are also present in the last curricular document. Principles that promote dialogue and openness. Catholic religious education as a school subject at the primary and secondary level promote cross-curricular connections in its teaching. We will agree that there is no contemporary modern socio-school teaching without cross-curricular interrelationships. The time we live in demands this. In correlatively conceptualized religious education, the contents of faith and the experience of the students interact. They are in a dialogue from which consequences for the selection of topics, the formulation of objectives and methodological approach are derived. This is also highlighted in our 2003 curriculum for Catholic religious education in primary schools, as it clearly states that, quotation, this principle influences the definition of all aspects of religious education in the school, end of quotation. If the principle of correlation between the contents of faith and the experience of student in religious education is properly set, it can contribute to an existential and constructive connection between these two realities. Therefore, care must be taken that the content of revelation is not anthropologically narrowed when students create an image of God to their liking, instead of considering what God might mean for their lives, which would correspond to the understanding of correlation as a systemic theological principle. In addition, teachers of religion should be very careful about how they correlate the content of religion and the experience of the students in Catholic religious education. The principle of correlation in Catholic religious education in schools is implemented at two levels. Correlation within the subject's teaching content, so-called intra-subject correlation, and correlation with specific teaching content of other school subjects, so-called cross-curricular correlation. Each of these levels has two further sub-levels. Correlation within subjects taught to the same age group, horizontal correlation, and correlation between subjects taught to different age groups, vertical correlation. The 2003 curriculum for Catholic religious education in primary schools emphasizes that the aim of Catholic religious education is, quotation, the systematic and harmonious theological, ecclesiological, and anthropological pedagogical connection of God's revelation and the church tradition with life experience of the students, aiming at to achieve systematic and complete ecumenical and dialogical open learning about the Catholic faith and informative, cognitive, experiential, and active level in order to attain maturity in the Christian faith and to achieve comprehensive, universal, and religious formation of students living in their religious and ecclesial, cultural, and social space. End of quotation. The prescribed goal of denominational religious education in primary school reveals an intra-subject correlation achieved through the didactic process of religious education that link the tradition of religion and the life experience of students. We also had heard about importance of correlation and experience those days. The correlation within the subject content of Catholic religious education in primary school cannot treat the religious tradition, the religious content, and the present experience of students as a separate concept that are turned inwards and have no relationship to each other. The processing of religious content in the teaching units is not just a listening of facts without logic, context, and purpose. This content is not an end on itself, but should find its achieved place in the student's life and shape their thinking, action, and attitudes. In addition to inter-subject correlation, there is also a correlation between different school subjects. Cross-curricular correlation provides students with comprehensive education and makes learning the content of school subjects much easier. There are various ways of linking Catholic religious education in primary and secondary schools with other school subjects. Their successful implementation depends on certain steps that need to be taken. The cross-curricular correlation can be methodical and content-related. Methodical cross-curricular correlation is expressed in the use of teaching methods and working methods that are specific to a particular school subject. The cross-curricular correlation of content is shown in the interrelation of the teaching content of several school subjects. It is advisable to repeatedly refer to the content of the interdisciplinary context in the teaching of a particular school subject, including Catholic religious education, so that students can combine the content they have acquired the various subjects into a logic whole and thus facilitating learning. Catholic religious education shares common teaching content with many school subjects. Some of them are creation, history, biology, geography, ethics, music, languages, and so on. And that is very interesting that the inter-subject connection is described on 10 pages in 2019 curriculum and include all school subjects, in fact. One form of cross-curricular linking of content is the day of integrated or project-based learning. Integrated and project-based learning days are organized in primary and secondary schools during the school year. They help students to get a complete picture of selected individual subjects as they are explored from different aspects. Therefore, school subjects from the fields of natural science, humanities, social science, and technical science are included in the integrated and project-based learning. Each of the subjects provides its contribution to linking content. When we learn to listen to the speeches of scientists, strategic plans and programs, and the lobbying of politicians and various associations of different topics that can and will be covered in integrated or project-based learning. For instance, water, family, forest, health, being a citizen in society, or the city I live in, etc. We learn to read about some topics observed by journalists and analysts in daily, weekly, and monthly magazines. We admire the works of artists, from writers, painters, and sculptors to musicians who speaks in their own language about the world and about the world and the realities that surround them. As a school subject that cultivates correlation with other school subjects by establishing collaboration in the exploring of common themes, of parallels in the content of lessons correlated, Catholic religious education explores certain themes from the rich perspective of theological science. Therefore, as such, it has its place in the days of integrated and project-based learning, in which it addresses a particular topic by drawing on the language of the Church. church teaching, and the theological science. We must not forget that field trips also make it possible to link the teaching content of school subject in the Catholic religious education can occupy a prominent place. Now, we will see some examples from religious education practice. There are many concrete examples from practice that show how religious teachers promote dialogue and openness in the construction of identity at the level of the entire Republic of Croatia. We have signed out several examples that are available on the website of Zagreb Archdiocese Office for Religious Education Teacher in School. First example, the methods work with education for dialogue. Religious education, on every slide will be the name of religious education teacher. PS mean primary school, the name of the school and the city where the school is, and what activity is about. So we have primary school Ive Andrića, religious education teacher Ivanka Osmak, visit the synagogue. Also, visit the mosque is one of those activities. Way of the Cross, in association with Ecospiritus, that is some kind of field trip. We also heard about field trip as a possibility for learning in the field. Also, research on the history of the church, correlation with history and with language, with Croatian. And this Glagoljica, if you remember when we have this walk around the city first evening, we stood in front of the church, Greece Catholic Church, and on the front of the church was something signed by these letters, Glagoljica. Erasmus Plus project, Cyril and Methodius, 1,000 years of what unites us and what divides us. This is about Erasmus project, one of secondary school, gymnasium from Samobor. Samobor is a town near to Zagreb, and they have this project in correlation with Solun in Greece. E-twinning project, prayers of our grandparents. Students make this book, and I correlated this with this model learning, as we are talking about local heroes. My grandmother is really local heroes, maybe, for someone. And this is one of projects presentation of school cooperatives in Zagreb. Croatian Association of School Cooperatives, they have a presentation one time a year for all what teachers with their students do. And this is maybe in correlation with this participating common good of the schools. Jean-Paul, you have talked about this, if I remember properly. After this, some interesting examples. We go on, and we are almost done. Religious education teacher training. In order for religious education teachers to carry out such and similar activities, their continuing education is necessary. In the Republic of Croatia, education in the form of professional training is organized by the Ministry of Science and Education and the Education and Teacher Training Agency in cooperation with other institutions such as National Catechetical Office of the Croatian Bishop Conference, the National Office of the Croatian Bishop Conference for Catholic Schools, diocesan catechetical offices, and the Zagreb Archdiocese Office for Religious Education in Schools. Only 3 examples. In the context of our topic, we signed out 3 examples of professional gatherings. One for religious education and ethics teacher, one for religious education teachers and at the state level, and one for religious education teachers at the archdiocese level. First one In 2012, an expert conference titled Kohlberg's Theory of Cognitive Moral Development and Kohlberg's Fenton Approach to Leading Moral Dilemma discussion was held in Zagreb, led by 2 professors from Israel. The general goal of these conferences was to enable Croatian teachers of religious education and teachers of ethics to discuss moral dilemmas with students in a structured way based on Kohlberg's theory of cognitive moral development. That is first picture. We were face in face. It's 2020. The aim of the conference for religious education teacher of the Zagreb Archdiocese titled Dialogue and Interdisciplinarity in Religious Education. Aim was to contextualize the possibilities of dialogue in the life and work of religious education teachers, to describe how they deal with differences in perspectives, conflicts and difficulties in the educational process, and to distinguish how using what tools using to promote transparency and accountability in religious education, vocation, and work. This is the second picture. That is 2022, and education was blended. It was as blended learning. And the third, the professional conference, Catechetical Winter School, named What Kind of Society Do We Want to Live in? School Religious Education from the Perspective of Fratelli Tutti, was held online on January 2022. The goals of this education were as follows. First, to understand the educational system as a meeting place for diversity. Second, to perceive the place of religious education in school as important for the value perspective of the future of a society. And the third, to link religious education and the content of other subjects for the purpose of civil society development. And really short, some names of lecture and practice simple. Lecture was titled Society as a Polyhedron. Can we live without the center and the periphery, according to Pope Francis? And the examples of good practice were named nurturing the dialogue, for instance, or evaluation of equality, equality as a result of conscious and careful nurturing of fraternity. Third, evaluation of human dignity, working with children with disabilities. Then let's help the children on the street. Let's put a smile on their face. Something connected also with be useful in the community. Then small step toward the democratic society was one example. And the last example, evaluation of democracy, elements of forum theater in religious education. I think there's something, Henri, something I heard yesterday, day before. The offered program shows that the values that are curricular or for participation in the culture of democracy are being developed in the educational process within Catholic religious education. Just a little short explanation of third picture. There is evaluation of this winter school we have. Green means good. Green means excellent. Yellow means good. Red means sufficient. Yes, and blue. It doesn't have blue, but blue means poor. And first is about content, how participants are satisfied with content. So almost all green. The second is about how they use that content in their own practice. And the third is something about implications, implication for their work. Is it enough? I don't know, probably not. But we do what we can to do, as I think Andri said, that we do what we can do in our situation. And finally, Catholic schools and their identity. The fruit of Croatian independence joined in the early 1990s was that the first Catholic schools were diocesan and religious seminars, which reopened after 45 long years and became accredited secondary schools. The previously mentioned agreement between the Holy See and the Republic of Croatia regarding their collaboration in the fields of education and culture confirms the right of the Catholic Church to establish schools of any level and the right of its teachers to enjoy the same rights as all employers of public schools. Another important document is, as we all already heard, the implementing agreement between the government of the Republic of Croatia and the Croatian Bishop Conference of Catholic primary and secondary schools, which sets out in detail the right and obligation of Catholic schools in the Republic of Croatia. We also already heard that there are 24 Catholic schools in the Republic of Croatia, 12 primary and 12 secondary. Although their number is still small, Catholic schools in Croatia are increasingly in demand because they are recognized as places where students are safe and receive the necessary attention and support, develop a Christian moral education, and receive an excellent education. In addition, they have been highlighted as schools with great social and community involvement. Catholic schools focus fully on the goal of their existence and activity, which is the education of the whole person in the light of the gospel and frequent encounters with Christ, drawing for him all the energy necessary for the work of creating in the school community an atmosphere permitted by the evangelical spirit of freedom and love. All subjects in Catholic schools are imbued with this goal, including Catholic religious education. The words of the Congregation for the Catholic Education, which emphasize that the curriculum of Catholic schools is and should be at the service not only for modern economic and technological developments, but at the service of the education of the whole person, clearly indicated the efforts of Catholic schools. Catholic schools have always been something more because they constantly promote a society of wisdom, evaluate everything in the light of Christian and universal values, and educate in the light of the Church's social teaching and social responsibility. They must be filled with encounters and harmonious fusion of learning and life so that students can have a professional, formative experience nurtured by scientific research in the various articulation of knowledge, and at the same time wise, linking into a life inspired by the gospel. On this picture, you also can see that Catholic schools also have some projects. This is Let's Track on European Tracks is a project of Catholic primary school from Šibenik. And they have this project with some schools from Spain, and you can read what the main goal is. It is, I think, a very interesting project, so I choose it. Conclusion. With this presentation, we wanted to show the possibilities that Catholic religious education in public and Catholic schools can offer with regard to the given them of promoting open dialogue. Catholic religious education is not a closed and detached school subject. Since it was reintroduced into the educational system of the Republic of Croatia, it has achieved, among the other things, a correlative approach to its own content. It cultivates interdisciplinarity with both theological and non-theological sciences. The reality of the world in which we live needs this from Catholic religious education, but also from catechesis in general. Catholic religious education is characterized by an evangelization specificity, thank you for help, namely that is encouraging in today's culture to combine its knowledge with other knowledge contents. As an original form of service to the world, Catholic religious education makes the gospel present in the personal process of a systematic and critical engagement with culture. In the context of today and its own place in the educational system, it offers students in many cases a unique opportunity to come into contact with the message of faith. This leads, among the other things, to Catholic religious education, promoting its identity and remaining open to dialogue. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Gordana, for this very rich presentation. No. As you have seen, the Catholic education in Croatia is almost perfect. I'm joking. If you have questions, maybe from the African point of view or other point of view, we can complement each other, please. Is there another microphone?
Thanks. I was very, very interested in what she said, because my topic of work is identity, and my concern is how can we help our society, the public school and the Catholic school, to integrate the results of such a conference and such a symposium. How can we help our society to integrate it? It's the first part of my question. The second part is, I was impressed by the association, what you are doing here, what you are doing in Europe. As we initiated here a dialogue with Africa, what is your plan for this cross education with Africa, education in Africa? That's my 2 points.
Thank you for your attention and thank you for your question. How can we integrate our results for these conferences? I think that we all can bring together our heads and then we can thought what possibility we can think, what possibility we have. I think that we have a lot of possibilities on different levels of academic, this level, but also in some other levels, in practice also. You also in Africa have teacher education for teacher trainings. That is, I think, also very important part, because quality of teacher is it's very important for quality of education at all. So I think that opportunity is a lot. We are maybe distant physically, but this online communication, we can use it on this purpose and on this, I think, very valuable way. So I don't know, maybe something. No? And the second plan with education, I didn't quite understand with Christian. Sorry.
No. I want to know what can be your plan to make things concrete with other continents like Africa. What we initiated here as a dialogue with cross dialogue with Africa. what can you, what is your plan? Your plan to
Here in Croatia, you mean as a... I think we have...
what's the plan here? And a modern this place, what do you think to put this a project far from Croatia? You understand?
I don't if I quite understand, but I try to answer. I think that we can learn a lot of African experience, and I think on the level of Bishop conferences there is missionary committee, something like that, and that cooperation is, as I know, that cooperation exists and is purposeful. Sister is one of the best argument for that, and I think that we can step forward on this way, but always is something much more in possibility. Maybe Sister Tia better understand the question, maybe have more information about it. I have no, I'm from some civic institution, so I don't have this ecclesial information.
Understand. Before leaving the microphone to another, I want to give an example. Perhaps you will understand better. In France, I have a Paris with which we are in dialogue, and the school girls and school boys put themselves together and to plan to travel to Benin, to stay there with school girls and school boys from Benin, and to stay for 3 weeks, 1 month before coming. Are you in your plan such a project?
Thank you for explanation. Now I quite understand. I am slow-minded. What I can do? This is a really good example, and something like Erasmus Plus. I think that you mean so. This is project financed by European Union, because all cost. So I hope that we in the future have some projects like this Erasmus Plus for European countries. I think that it is possibility for apply for some funds for such activities as you have said. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
No.
Okay.
I don't.
Thank you very much for your lecture. It was very clear, very inspiring.
Thank you.
And yeah, I think as people who come from other sites, other culture, other church, we have learned many things through your lecture. Now, my question is about this correlation you said. You explained very well the correlation, and you have said the correlation, horizontal correlation and vertical correlation. Do you think when in religious education school, Catholic school identity, and this will of training an open identity, and it has been said yesterday, but I would like to hear you about the root. When you dialogue with other persons, you are supposed to have to be well rooted in your identity, and how religious education can be engaged in this dialogue without forgetting to foster also these theological contents. Yeah, I would like to hear you about this question. That is the theoretical question. Now the practical question, because your speech, your lecture was very, very practical. Yeah, in organization of your Catholic education here in Croatia, do you have a bureau? Because I have said that we have this problem in Africa where we don't have a team of colleagues with multi-disciplinary fields. Do you have a bureau which help bishops and with many people from different disciplines? Yeah, I would like just an information. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your questions and thank you for all that you have said. Just a little bit clearer, do you mean for Catholic schools or for religious education?
For religious education,
for religious education
as a part of Catholic school, a part of depending on Bishop's Conference.
Yes.
Yeah.
I think, first of all, route for dialogue and route for religious education. It is written on our curriculums. There are always root of Christianity, Jesus Christ. So it is written on these curricula. But fidelity to God and fidelity to the human is also one of important base. Yes, but if you ask for those theoretical level and support, support is always from professors from Catholic faculty in different fields. When it is about some subjects that can be explained much more. We cooperate on these teacher trainings, and as Tomislav, as Josip, Thea, Mariana, and the other from different Professor Barić and Professor, sad neko ćeš propustiti, jasno. We work together, and when we have some subject that is specific, more specific than method, didactic, and so on, and that means, then we call some professors from faculty and we discuss religious education teaching can ask, and that is what we can do. In the level of textbooks or in the level of some other areas of organization, I don't know really it is correlation between professors so deep. It depends about human-to-human correlation as I see the things. But in addition, the moment of kao poticaj relationship, yes, exist. I don't know. I'm bad explainer. It's okay. Maybe some. It is better question for you, Professor Šimunović, but
Do you want to compliment?
No, it's enough. He has a lot of povjerenje in me. Lots of trust on me. Thank you. Thank you.
He's my boss.
Wow.
We are training together.
Oh, so, okay.
Thank you very much.
There is no question, maybe? Just, maybe to make a link with these two questions. When you taught Gaston about what can we do, for instance, for cooperation with Africa. For us, it's a very unknown continent and a new experience. But what I can say that the last 15 years almost, we have more and more students of theology from Africa. Odilon is one of product, if I can say, of the Croatian theology. At that time, he was the first one with another very wonderful, also priest now in Africa, Alexandre, and now we have 5, 6 students from Congo and Benin, or no, all of Congo, Franciscan priests. And you know, at the beginning, it was very strange, if we can say, because we don't have so many Africans in Croatia. Some of them come to study medicine here, because the medicine in this part of Europe is pretty interesting and of big quality. But I think it was, in the point of view of the faculty, some kind of experience of pluralism. To see people from another, first at all, it seems funny, but another color of skin, another culture, another continent, another perception of Christianity, of church. And for them also, it was a very challenging learning to know how language, how mentality. So I think it can be, and the links is our missionaries in Africa. And they come through the Croatian missionaries, as sister is a missionary. So I think it's a good link. About the root, I feel the need to say something. Yes, the root is Jesus Christ, the teaching of the church. The relationship between the Catholic Church and the Croatian people, sometimes the roots are very important. They are very important, the roots. We said that many times these days. But sometimes the root can be an inconvenient. Sometimes when you are based everything on root, you can also forget the reality which is out of the root. So I think we have to more and more experiment the plurality. The root and the identity is very important. But as we said a few times these days, in this part, because communism, very often the religious identity is identified with the national identities. Our roots should be Christian roots, not only national roots. And it's the same things for Serbian Orthodox Church and the other communities, even for Muslims. So the roots are very important, but the fruits are more important. Is there any question, maybe? No? So we will conclude. I give the word to Professor Filipovic, and she will conclude our symposium. Thank you very much.
Dear colleagues and guests, I would like to conclude this symposium by thanking you and many others. Thank you, my dear colleagues, who made the great effort of traveling and coming here and contributed to the success of this symposium with your lectures and with your precious presence. Thank also to the colleagues who joined us online. A warm thank you to the Dean and the entire leadership of our faculty and the Faculty Council who accepted and supported this symposium as their project. Thanks to the program and organizing committee for every contribution, and especially to my colleague, Professor Tomislav Kovac, who was with us all these days and contributed in different ways to the quality of this symposium. Thanks to you, our faithful audience, who participated in our program with interest, and also to everyone who followed us or will continue to watch and listen us online. A special thank to the Apostolic Nuncio in Croatia, Monsignor Giorgio Lingua, who joined us and expressed us his appreciation. Thanks to the people who filmed this event. Thanks to the media who reported about it. Thanks to the Archdiocesan Pastoral Institute that provided us with wonderful hospitality. Thanks to God, who instilled in us the desire for knowledge and dedication to our work and our mission. May He accompany us, all of us, and especially all of you, in all our ways and your ways. I wish you all to reach your home safely in the name of the Father and the Son and the Holy Spirit.
Amen.